Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Vintage Club Conversations. We are thrilled to have Jason Snell, Senior Revenue Strategist at Xactly Corp. Jason has a rich history in sales leadership where he has honed skills in new business development, customer relationship management, and driving business successes. At Xactly Corp, he uses his expertise in revenue forecasting and analytics to help businesses enhance their revenue potential through technology. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll start with your 30 years of experience, right, in sales leadership. That's a lot. So, what are the top three qualities you believe are essential for a successful sales leaders in today's competitive market?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. I think that we've seen specifically here in my time in the US. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from Australia, but I'll use the US, my US experience as an example. There has been so many macroeconomic changes throughout the last 24 years in the
Yeah.
US specifically, and I think there needs to be an inherent willingness to adapt and not be resistant to change. I think that's really important when it comes to sales leadership. I think there is also a necessity to understand what the customer journey is in order to align either your go to market strategy or even
Hmm.
the product offerings to align with what you would want and how you want your customers to experience either your product or your engagement or just even be an end user, to be
Yeah.
honest. And I think the last thing would honestly be someone that is willing to coach. You need to be able to develop a team and not necessarily know all the answers. You know, there's a funny saying that you always want to hire your replacement. I think there's a lot of talent out there, and that talent can elevate not only leadership but the peers that are around them. And I think that's a very important part of how sales leaders should view their team is, do we have people that are going to elevate us as opposed to just adding
Yeah.
another body to the process?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on all 3 points, but especially the last one. Sometimes when things are not going well, either at a company level or at a team level, and you just add, one person, that one person can actually come and make a difference. Not maybe just in terms of metrics like ARR and stuff, but even in the morale of the team, in the way of thinking as well. So I think sometimes adding that one person can actually bring a change in the entire dynamics of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a caveat to that is, I think sales, and I've always said this, is sales is a team sport. And if we could use a basketball team as an example, you don't have five point guards on a basketball team. You have
Hmm.
people in different roles that play different positions, and that creates cohesion in a winning environment. So I think when you're assessing who's on your team and what they bring to the table, sometimes they need to have contrasting areas of expertise because then that creates a well-rounded team. And I think that's another way to some people can use as a metaphor to approach how they lead their sales organizations.
Right, right, absolutely. So you have probably seen, several interesting sales scenarios play out in front of you over so many experiences, right? Could you talk about a couple of most difficult sales deals you worked on, and how did you really end up winning the accounts in those difficult situations? Because especially, when you sell to mid-market or enterprises with long sales cycles, so many stakeholders involved. You have to do stakeholder mapping. You have to make sure that, you are beating the competition in different scenarios. So overall, what are the things, which made you win those accounts?
Yeah, everyone remembers the tough ones, right? Because you learn so much from those experiences. One thing that I've taught my teams in the past, a very common theme for how we see success play out within my current role, is you need to identify the right economic buyer. If you're not speaking to the decision maker and you're speaking to someone that is a so-called influencer within the organization,
Mm,
you can develop happy years. And what I mean
yeah,
by that is they'll probably tell you all the right things because they don't want to let you down. You've built a relationship with them, and they love your product, but they're not ultimately the one at the end of the day that's going to sign the contract and hand over the keys to the mansion, so to speak. So I think that some of the mistakes I made early on and some of the most challenging deals that I did was I didn't identify the economic buyer. And so when that alignment's not there, it can really prolong that sales cycle. And as everyone knows, time kills all deals. So
yeah,
I think to combat that, my advice, again, based on experience, is that you can never have spent too much time on discovery. And whether that is the comment that you made about mapping out what that power or structure looks like within the organization. Who are the economic buyers? Who are the end users? Who are going to be your administrators of this particular
yeah,
product solution? When you understand, jokingly, who's who in the zoo, I think that then allows you to strategize how you approach each opportunity and each deal, specifically when it comes to enterprise, because you've got cross-functional influences where you've got competing business priorities. And so
mm,
what may be important to someone in an organization may not be important to another, or it's not as high a priority. So I
right.
do believe that you need to somewhat slow down to speed up. And that slowing down process is where you're creating enough value in your expertise as a consultant, not a salesperson, to align the needs of their business with your product offering. So always, again, think like a buyer when you're doing any type of negotiation, and try to prioritize what's important to them, not what's important to you. And I think that helps create alignment. And as I said, there's some of the deals early on and some of the deals that I've overseen with my teams, the mistakes have been very much aligned with what you were saying. There's no map and understanding who's who and who do we need to be able to bring into the discussion. Haven't identified the economic buyer, and we haven't truly aligned the value proposition of what we do with the
Yeah.
business priorities of that organization. So I think those are the key things that I think in this day and age we need to sometimes slow down to be able to win these deals.
So throughout this process, Jason, do you use any frameworks? Have you seen those frameworks change over, last 3 decades of your experience?
Yeah, I definitely have. Yeah, and this is kind of where technology kicks in. Previously, without the assistance of, let's call it, predictability or even descriptive AI, without that present in the sales process, a lot of it has relied on either the heroics of your sales team to really,
Hmm.
get the job done, or it's been relying on a lot of intuition bias on how the deal is playing out. And I strongly believe that in order for you to be able to identify where there's areas of opportunity within your business, that process needs to be structured. Now, depending on the vertical that you function in, it may not need to be multiple.
Hmm.
BANT is also another option for people where you're identifying the budget, your authority, the needs, and the timing. So there are multiple different types of methodology out there. But I believe that the methodology needs to be in place simply as a leader to be able to identify room for improvement, where there's potential error occurring within your sales process, and just, for me, I think it's important to have checkpoints along the way throughout that sales process. And the methodology, regardless of what it is, if it's not being applied authentically, if it's done out of compliance, not out of a commitment
Yeah.
to do the right thing, it's kind of worthless because, you know, you're trying to capture data. Sales is transitioned where it's a very data driven environment that we live in right now, and it's pivoted a lot. And so
Yeah.
the methodology truly is enabling leadership and other functions of the business, whether it be marketing, to be able to drive opportunities to the top of the funnel. There's so many things that you learn from your data. And I think that's where the sales methodologies help create that standardized way or a standardized lens of looking at the business. But I don't think there's a one size fit
Hmm.
all solution when it comes to methodology. I think it really does come down to sales leaders looking at what is our customer journey, as I said, like where
Yeah.
are the points of contact where we either can pause and capture some analytics around that experience based on conversion or lack of engagement, and where do we apply some other tactics to continue to grow our relationship with the customer or to be able to keep them engaged throughout the sales process. And I think the other thing is we have transitioned a lot from being a transactional based sales environment to a relationship based sales environment. And so when you go from transaction to thanks very much, see you later, probably won't see you again, to thanks so much for your business, who else do you know that can benefit from what we offer? It
Yeah.
becomes this process where it's reliant heavily on that experience that you offer, and customer service then becomes a very important part of any sales process.
Right, right. No, I love the way you lay down that frameworks are really important, I think, from tracking point of view, but the frameworks should not just be used for data gathering purpose. It should actually, you should be having conviction, and it actually helps you in terms of thinking that you have covered all the points and you're not really missing on any point which is required to actually close a deal. So your expertise in revenue forecasting and analytics, right? Which has helped many businesses enhance their revenue potential. What are some key metrics or indicators you prioritize while you're forecasting revenue? And how do you ensure that accuracy in your predictions is, almost there at 100%?
Yeah, you know what? It
It's
always
never 100%.
And I think what's amazing is when you talk about revenue forecasting, what's considered to be acceptable level of accuracy is within 10%. If you're 90% right in either
Yeah,
direction, then you're doing a pretty good job. But think about that. If my organization has an annual target of $10 million, I'll just use round numbers here,
yeah,
and I have 10 sellers that are all responsible for a quota of $100,000 each. If they miss by 10%, then I miss by $1 million, right?
yeah.
So that roll up is so important to identify and understand really early on. So when it comes to revenue forecasting, data hygiene is so important. There's a funny saying, garbage in, garbage out. It's really important for companies to humble themselves and take a good look at how are you capturing data, and is the data accurate. I also believe that forecasting isn't a snapshot in time. You
Hmm.
have to be agile when looking at how you're forecasting your revenue. And I always say, like, you may have a quota and you're calling a number against your forecast, but if you don't ever change your call number, it shows that you're not in tune with your business. Everyone can continue to put pressure on, we're going to hit that number. I've got confidence in my team. We're going to hit it. But at the end of the day, it pull it you lose credibility
Yeah,
because you're not making the right decisions within the business, and you're putting your focus on executing or the end result of execution, not the execution and how do you get to that end result. And so when I look at forecasting, and we dig into what's happening, there's a couple of things. We want to have one single source of truth so everyone's aligned and looking at the same data,
hmm.
same
Yeah,
dashboards, same analytics. It needs to be as real time as possible, so there's no latency in the decision making that you're doing, and it needs to be agile. Like, you need to be
yeah,
able to see what's happening today and what can I pull forward, or what can we do within our operation or organization to continue to drive in the right direction. So I know that's a very high level generalized way of looking at forecasting, but again, as I said, the foundation of good forecasting is good data. You
hmm.
know, everything from above that data is going to give you insights and predictability on how you may need to pivot your go-to-market strategy, your price offering, your value proposition. with that forecast, it can influence your head count. Like, do we need to grow our
Yeah.
business? Do we need to realign territories? Do we need to spend more money on marketing because we're not seeing some organic growth or interest and awareness in our product? Like, there are so many different things there that can be assessed when it comes to looking at using your forecast as the barometer for success and then building off of that.
Interesting. So you spoke about quotas, right? So there are always high performers and there are salespeople who don't meet their quotas. So
Mhm.
how do you make sure that most of them are close to what forecasting you have done? Do you have any sales enablement tactics as well, or that is something which is mostly taken care by other sales departments?
Yeah, and I think this is it goes back to where your sales methodology has to play out, because the people that you find, and specifically in this environment that we live in today, right? In the post-COVID world, and I know we're 2 years out from COVID, but there's been a paradigm shift, right? We now have hybrid and remote workforces where there's less accountability around them following the true process, right? I call them
Hmm.
lone wolves. And typically speaking, there's people with experience that are individual contributors that have got by doing what they've done for quite some time and feel like they don't need to conform or comply with how a company wants to structure the organization or their sales process. So when that happens and then times get tough, it's hard to provide that mentorship that you need to help
Yeah.
elevate them or get them back on track. And it's hard to elevate the team when everyone's doing something different, right? So I find that when you've got people that are underperforming, it really does come down to input. And that is like, are they doing the right things to drive the results? And who are they trying to emulate? Right? Who's mentoring them? And it's very difficult when you've got a sales organization that could cover the globe. How do you get time with this person to help mentor them and
Yeah.
bring them up? And so that's sometimes why analytics does play a role in how you manage your team in this current environment, because you can't be in an office together. You're not having these check-ins, periodically throughout the day. You need to schedule someone and get on their calendar and do a Zoom
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, where when by the time you get to that meeting, other things may have popped up, right? So
Yeah.
I believe that in this environment, the methodology, or just the way that you track performance is driving the behaviors, but also trying to create more cohesion in your
Hmm.
sales. So yeah, hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jason, you spoke a lot about data analytics tools. So, how do you think with the rise of AI, the approach for sales and revenue strategies have changed? Because you work with so many different businesses on a daily basis. What's your take on their willingness and sometimes even unwillingness, right, to incorporate AI more fully into their strategies and operations?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because obviously AI is a huge buzzword, in all business right now. But I like using this analogy because my wife's a teacher, and so with the rise of ChatGPT, students are using it to cheat their way through school, right? They're using it to write essays for them and do things like that. So I think that companies need to take a step back and really look at how they're deploying AI, because if it's a tool they're using to help their sellers send more emails on a daily basis, it's not truly AI. It's like the students using it to write their essays for them. So I look at AI as being, a couple of ways that you can bifurcate it to make it beneficial for your business. It's is it prescriptive? Is it descriptive? And is there a machine learning component to it? And is there let's call it aggregated generative AI component to it? And let me explain that a little bit. For me, descriptive AI is taking a look at the past. It's taking a look at historic information, the way that your company's performed over time, and then it's kind of mapping it out. It's almost like modeling it from there on out. When you start layering the present or the future, which is more the prescriptive AI component of the AI landscape, you're now going, it should be a tool now that, or a teammate, I like to call it, a teammate that is providing recommendations on how you need to pivot your business. Now, that could be giving you earlier indicators on sales performance and pipeline functionality and pipeline performance, but it should kind of give you help you pose the questions on how do we need to pivot, right? Again, early indicators of helping you be more agile in a very ever-changing market conditions that, well, in the ever-changing market conditions that we live in. So we've got something that helps us model out what we've done in the past and give us some predictability into what we're going to do in the future. It needs to have a component that's giving you suggestions on what it's seeing from a high level down. And the last piece is that machine learning. It's from the point in time that you deploy it, it needs to be learning the behaviors that are happening within the organization, again, with good data, to start giving more accuracy to what's going to happen from an analytics standpoint or a forecasting standpoint. So, you know, there is so many tools that sellers use in this day and age, you know, whether it's a CRM, you know, a communication intelligent platform, whether it's, you know, some form of email writing tool, whether it's a quoting tool, whatever it is that's out there. I think, you know, when we saw each other in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, there was a huge talk about tech consolidation, right? And how do you create more efficiency in the workplace with tech consolidation? Now, this is kind of where I said before, adding another AI tool into that mix is just going to create more frustration for your sales team because, again, as I said, it's another tool. What it needs to be is a teammate. So if it can lay over the top of or work behind the scenes of your CRM, or let's call it your intelligent revenue platform, then it's a teammate. When I log in as an individual contributor into my CRM platform, I need to be able to zoom focus in what's important, what's going to drive the business. And as a leader, when you look into your reporting tool, you need to have the insights to say, okay, this is what our data is telling us. I don't need an analyst to summarize it for me. I want to be able to look at it and be able to remove emotion, remove intuition, and just sort of use that data to create a hypothesis of what's happening in our business and what should we look to expect in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. You know, I go back to, again, another sports analogy. I'm sorry, I'm a sports person, so that this is kind of where my comfort zone is. But I think about baseball and think about the Oakland Athletics back in the 80s when they invented the use of statistics in baseball. And, you know, everyone's probably heard of, or the audience here has probably heard of, Moneyball. And that is using statistics to win. And it changed the landscape of baseball. You know, it allowed lower market teams that couldn't have the payroll of your Yankees and your Dodgers and some of those big market teams to be competitive because they used analytics and statistics. And I think in this playing field, the smaller companies have an opportunity to play with the big companies if they use the data in a way that a big company uses that data, right? And so it doesn't need to be about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on technology. It's about using the technology and deploying the technology in a way that it becomes a teammate for the organization.
Oh, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that, especially, right from salespeople using so many tools and the sports analogy. In fact, I was just last week, I was discussing this with someone. So I'm a huge Formula One fan, and the amount of data, the volume of data they collect every second, like every second per car is in GBs, which is like massive data. And the kind of insights, the kind of analysis you can do from that data and decide even tire changing strategies, when you should, which driver should take a lead and all of that. It's super interesting. So I think, yeah, a lot of companies can definitely collect data, but now I think with this entire generative AI, even smaller companies have got an opportunity to leverage AI, right? Not just bigger companies where, you had to spend millions of dollars to actually, have machine learning or AI kind of technology. but now it has become more affordable, and that's why, what we have been hearing everywhere is that you can do a lot more with small teams now. So of course there's a lot of exaggeration there. I mean, the expectations people have from generative AI is here, while I think generative AI is somewhere in between still. But very interesting times from technology point of view, I feel.
Absolutely. And we probably have this conversation 2, 3 years from now, and the landscape will be completely different. I think, as I said, it should be about creating efficiencies and ease of business and, elevation of how you use data, not to cut corners. And when I
Yeah,
say corners, I mean creating efficiencies can create cut corners, but it shouldn't be at the detriment of the execution of your game plan, right? And so
yeah,
it's going to be amazing. Like I think that with some of the technology that I've seen out there in the marketplace, I people are concerned about AI replacing jobs. I think that what people need to be more worried about is not using AI, because then you are becoming expendable. If you're
yeah,
not keeping
yeah.
up with the trends, then you become expendable. So don't think about AI as replacing humans. It's going to replace the humans that don't use AI.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, what an amazing way to end the conversation. I think we are all walking away with a lot of knowledge after this. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.